Hi, I'm Colin, and this is my 2010 KTM 530 EXC. I've done a number of different videos on this bike, doing upgrades and maintenance and various modifications. So if you're interested in that, look for the playlist. But the latest adventure that I'm going on is taking this down to Baja. We're going to go see the Baja 1000. I'm going with a bunch of good buddies of mine, and we're actually going to see one of our buddies actually race in the Baja 1000. So we'll be camping off the bikes, helping out that team where needed, and we'll have plenty of access to gas stations and infinite taco stands that are down there, as well as water, bottled water, and that sort of stuff. So it's not like we're going out to the middle of nowhere total survival mission, but definitely taking this stripped down dirt bike essentially that has just the basics for making it street legal, and going through the path that many have gone down to try to turn it into more and more of an adventure bike. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, I'm going to take you through what I've sort of thoughtfully and sometimes painfully gotten to in the end after lots of purchases and lots of testing things out. So here we go. Well, starting at the front, I knew that I wanted to try to get some weight over the front wheel, because when you start accessorizing, adding on bags, it's a little bit easier to, find your way into some saddlebags and a rack. In this case, the rack was actually pretty hard to find, but it's easier to start putting stuff on the back of the bike behind you, and you end up getting very rear heavy. And so I knew that the challenge was going to be to get weight evenly distributed across the bike. And I focused actually primarily on the front at first, and knowing that I would be able to put on those saddlebags and add weight back there. So this is basically the first part of my solution. This is an Atlas 46 tool bag, and this was a gift to me a number of years ago. I've gotten a lot of use out of it. Really nice unit just for general purpose. Basically it rolls up, it's got all these pockets on the inside, and it rolls up into a nice package, but also on the back side it's got these panels that open up, and you've got room for tools that don't go in those pockets in the front. So on the left side here, we've got combo wrenches, crescent wrench. The right side, four-way screwdriver. These are handy because you get 4 screwdrivers in the space of one. Seal pick. I think these are just handy to have around for lots of different things. Vice grips, and these can be a lever in a pinch. Some slotted pliers. None of these are my best tools. Basically, I found the spares that I had in my drawers, and as I've been modifying this bike and prepping it for the trip, I've actually worked off of a rolling cart, and everything that I need to work on the bike, that tool goes onto the cart, and then it stays on that cart until I get to this point where I'm packing. So this way, I basically have all the tools on board that I needed to do any of the modifications or any of the prep for this trip. It's just a really easy way to figure out what you need and not pack anything you don't. So I've basically got a full toolkit for my bike. It's going to vary. On a KTM, it's going to be maybe pretty similar, and on some Japanese bikes, it's probably going to be pretty similar. Probably all these bikes share a lot of the same tools, but I know what I need for mine, and I was able to come up with that by basically just taking the tools on the trip that I used for the prep. You saw what was in the back. I'll go through the pockets up front here and kind of tell you how I laid these things out. So the top pocket here is the electronics pocket, and you can see this cable is actually going around to the other side of the bars. There actually is a charger over there, so I'll get into that next. But my plan was to be able to charge things like this radio battery or this magnetic light on the way while I'm driving, because if you know anything about these EXCs, they don't have a great charging system. They don't have a ton of power to offer. And so I wanted to charge things up while I'm going down the road. Another electronic thing that's here, pretty essential, I'm running a Tubliss tire system. So I've got a little air compressor here. This does 120 PSI, believe it or not. And it's about the size of a GoPro. So here's the hose. You set it to the pressure you want, and it will take it up to that pressure and stop, which is pretty nice. So with the Tubliss bead lock system, I'll be checking that bead lock every morning, making sure it's over 100 PSI. So this is invaluable. What else I've got in here? I've got a manual air gauge as well as a headlamp. This is a SAE to SAE heavy duty cable. All the guys that are on the trip have SAE connectors on their batteries, So if somebody goes dead, especially one of the guys that's got EFI, we can use this to connect two bikes together. This is 10 gauge, which is very unusual, and this will help us actually crank, a remote bike off of the local battery if needed. So electronics go up here. Things that need to get charged go up here. Assortment of USB cables, because ultimately you're going to probably run into all of them. So like here's one A to C. I've got a C to C, and then I've got, I think also in here, I hope so, yeah, I've got a to micro, is it micro B? That's what charges my little magnetic light here. So just good to have those on board. They don't weigh anything, and better to have them and not need them than to need them and not have them. So these are the things that charge while going down the road. I can roll up this tool sack and the cable stays in. It's not a problem at all. I can still charge things in here because it's the top pocket while I'm going down the road. All right, let's move on to the second one. This is kind of like things that the bike needs. I've got some air filter socks. I've got a half liter of oil here. This is the oil that I need, especially for the transmission side. This bike has a split sump system.
And as an aside, one of the few known issues on this generation was the potential for oil to migrate between the transmission and engine crankcases. I published a video a few years ago where I installed a set of upgraded parts to minimize the risk of that migration, so I will link that here.
So I could put any high quality synthetic oil in the engine, but this is what I need for the transmission side. Full tire plug kit. Again, I'm running the Tubliss system, so I'm not even carrying tubes. There's no tubes in my world anymore. I can't even use them if I wanted to. This is what I'm using instead. It's a car plug kit. This lets you take care of punctures from the outside. So I've got a tire kit. I've got a spare key. This will go onto one of my buddies' bikes so that they have my spare key. Got a couple spare levers, spare brake lever, spare clutch lever. So this is the stuff, to kind of keep the bike going. That's the theme of this pocket. And we'll get into the next one, which is more about the rider. So yeah, this is a shovel. It's actually an aluminum one. I'm going to trade it in for a titanium one. But without going into many details, you need a shovel, especially when you're down in Mexico, camping out in the middle of nowhere, along with some wet wipes. There goes my Benchmade. Wet wipes are pretty self-explanatory. I also like these dude wipes. They come in individual packages. These are great when you get really greasy, clean off your hands. Plenty of earplugs for sleeping and for riding. I'm a glasses wearer full time, so I've got a spare set of glasses here because if I break the ones that I'm wearing, that would be pretty catastrophic. Beyond that, little fire starter, why not? And then some these gloves are kind of do everything gloves. They're anti-abrasion, anti-cut to a pretty low level, but they are rated for that. And they vent really well in the back, and they're kind of just do-all nitrile on the front. These can actually be worn as riding gloves in certain situations, just kind of do-all gloves in case I want something really light. And what else is in here? Oh yeah, bike registration, insurance. Now this is also the pocket where I will have my Mexico money. That is the money that I have available when I get pulled over. Good practice from anyone visiting Baja is, have a pocket like this that looks legit with a small amount of money in it, so that that's what you can present if it's demanded of you, let's put it that way, and not have your whole stash in one place. So that's stuff for the human. Next, we're getting into some more tools. Lots of nitrile gloves. These are just nice to have if you have to do some trailside fixes, and they keep your hands clean. Easier to throw these away than to carry around degreaser or whatever. I also like the Seal Doctor. This is good just to run around each day and pull any dirt, sand out of the shock seals. Nice little metric toolkit. This is sockets from, let's see, what am I doing? 4 through 13 millimeter plus a 17 for the drive sprocket. I've got a regular handle style, screwdriver style, 1/4-inch drive, as well as a ratchet, an extension, and this adapter from 1/4-inch drive to 3/8 drive. Little things that I found out I needed as I was prepping for the trip. Throw a sock in top, that gives you a built-in, hand wipe. Nice to have that, and also keeps things from rattling around as much as they might otherwise. What's next? Oh yeah, the last one. This is basically kind of your last resort trail side Redneck Fixes. I've got zip tie assortment, lots of different zip ties, heavy duty zip ties, 15 inches, real wide, structural zip ties you might call them. Super glue for smaller fixes that may be critical nonetheless. So here's some KTM screws. These are M6 and M8, as well as some blue Loctite, because it seems like these single cylinder 500 thumpers, their main job is just vibrating screws out of their holes. So I don't know what to say about that other than you need Loctite for basically everything. Lots of hose clamps. These can be used for all sorts of things in a pinch, and then for cutting the zip ties. Here's a stripped down micro side cutter. I really like these, and I use them for all my electronics type stuff, and that one just has the handles pulled off to make them a little bit smaller. So here's what goes on with this tool roll. Close it on up, wrap these straps around, and this can just roll up to the top. It snaps together. And then I've got some strategically placed carabiners up here, so the cable will stay doing its thing, and we'll just snap these carabiners onto the loops that are on this tool roll. And we've got a full tool roll that does not block the headlight, does not block my vision. It's putting weight directly over the front wheel, higher than maybe you'd like, but this is the best I could do for putting weight forward and making it be full of things that I'm just gonna need all the time. And when you stop, it's as easy as just unsnapping this, and instead of getting something out of your saddlebags, dropping it on the ground, getting sand all over it, it just lays down here on the front fender. I can get into it, pull out what I want. I'm standing up, easy to put stuff back away. Nice and simple system. So that's the front bag. Let's talk about the tank top bags. These are called pocket panniers. They're from Giant Loop. These are pretty cool. I'm still trying to work out exactly how I fit them on here, but basically I've got an extended tank here, and so I hook it to the front corner of the extendo tank, and then in the back they've got these side release buckles. So I've got them attached to each other. I'm trying to position things so I can get my knees with knee pads underneath here, but basically these are semi-removable. They're out of my way when I'm riding. They're weight forward. They're in a space that's basically not making the bike any wider because my knees are here anyways, but they are, providing quite a lot of space that wasn't being used. So right now I've got each one just carrying one of these SIG bottles. So this is 1¼ liter. And I can fill this with gasoline and have 2.5 liters of gas in these pockets that I'll use when I need to extend the range. Another way that I can get weight forward on the bike. And you can see right now, just to keep on stressing that, you can see how it's tipping back and forth. That's how it sits when I normally put it on this stand. If I'm just working on it without all this stuff on it, it kind of tips like that. So this balance, it's a lot heavier, there's no getting around that, but it's the same balance that I have when I'm not all loaded down. And I think that's really important for using the skills and the experience that I've got. When I've taken this on a shakedown route, I noticed that I had lots of traction and authority on the front tire. It actually was confidence inspiring. I'd sit forward a little bit when needed, but basically with the weight on the front of the bike, I never felt like the front was gonna wash out. I still had the ability to flip the rear, get it stepping out, and it's very controllable versus if I put everything in my saddlebags and on my rack. Obviously I've got more space back here. I could load everything back here and I could have awesome traction in the rear tire all the time. But having the front wash out with a bunch of weight on the back, that would suck. And that would really ruin the experience. I'd just be kind of waiting nervously for that to happen all the time. Okay, let's move on. So that's the front end. Let's take you around to see what the handlebars look like. This is what I'm looking at going down the road. So a few modifications here. Obviously, most prominent, this is my phone mount. So I'm an Apple guy. I really like the MagSafe charger. MagSafe does, 15 watts on my phone, whereas some of the others are really nice ways of connecting to the mount. There's some really elegant, clip in, clip out sort of systems, but nothing charges like the MagSafe. So this is just an Apple puck that fits into a RAM holder. Also, RAM has a really good anti-vibe system. I used to work with RAM engineers quite a lot. I spent a lot of time at a trade show talking to the product president that talked about how they had to come to the engineering that resulted in having this anti-vibe system, because like other mounts, we had phones that were breaking, especially the camera. They figured all that out. Ram is really, really competent. They have great engineers, so I'm sticking with Ram. It's working for me, and that MagSafe works nicely for me as well. Bringing a mirror along, I don't know if I'll actually ever use this, but one of those things that's like, again, the Ram ball, I've got it here. It's not that much weight or that much inconvenience to bring it. So I'm bringing this along just in case I'm on some long highway stretches, you know, with crazy chase trucks or even race cars behind me. It might be nice just to have a view onto them. So the mirror is coming with. The next important upgrade was this. So this is a USB-A and USB-C charger. It also has a meter built in, which is something I'm actually pretty excited about because, again, the weak charging system on these bikes. So we've only got something like 30 watts going to the battery. That's what you can draw and expect the battery to stay at the same charge. Start drawing more than 30 watts, well, your battery is going to slowly start stepping down. And if you're drawing less than 30 watts, you can expect that your battery will charge all the way up. So this shows you the battery voltage and the current draw. The current draw. In this case, it's taking about half an amp. So 13.2 volts at half an amp is going forward to charge that radio battery up front just right now. And if I put my phone on here, of course, it'll switch modes and share the power with the phone and whatever it's charging on the front. Okay, next up, this is not stock. This is a PTT button or a push to talk button. This is from Rugged Radios. Pretty simple system, but pretty effective. I've already tried it out and I like it. Basically, you push this button and that's connected to this connector here. It's just an RCA connector, like a audio video type of connector. Anyways, this is the single thing that I clip to myself when I get on the bike. I've got a radio on me, I've got a headset in my helmet, and that wiring harness comes out of my pocket, plugs into here with a big, long, stretchy cord, almost like plugging into a jet ski. And if I dismount the bike, if we go separate ways, this pulls apart really easily. It is restrained. It's not pulling on the button. So if it isn't obvious, basically if I'm going down the road, press this button to talk, just like pressing the side button on a walkie-talkie. I can talk to my buddies. The rest of the time, I'm monitoring the channel that we've all agreed to be on. I can hear all the chatter right in the speakers that are in my helmet. A couple other things. I put on this windscreen from, oh, what is it? It's from Takomoto, but I think it's, is it Baja Works or something like that? It's okay. It's a little bit difficult to install. I had to modify it and I had to heat it and bend it to make it fit around my handguards. And I'm not sure how much noise or wind it's cutting down on, but put that on. I also have my RPM gauge here. This is about the most simple basic RPM gauge you can have. All it does is has a pickup wire that you run down to your spark plug and wind it around the cable to the spark plug, and the inductive current that goes through that spark plug wire signals this, and it lets you see your RPM. Pretty straightforward. And then on the other side, I've got a radiator temp gauge right there on the radiator cap, which is pretty handy. Yeah, there you go. If you kind of zoom in, you can kind of see part of it. I have to keep on working on that. Something I'll be checking in the beginning and then probably ignoring. I've got a fan on this bike and we'll be moving most of the time, so I don't think I'll have any overheating problems. Moving on to fuel. This has an Tubliss extended tank. This is the tank that uses the same size outside profile that the stock bike did. So these would have been just plastic thin winglets that go to the outside of the radiator. This tank replaces that same shape with more fuel. So it's actually only about 13 liters, which isn't huge, but it's a substantial upgrade from the stock tank, about 3.4 gallons in there. And so, you know, at 30 miles per gallon, let's say conservatively, I can do 100 miles. I'm also carrying extra fuel up here right next to the main fuel, and I can always carry more as well. I'll get into that next, but let's see, what else do I have that's important here? Well, I actually went ahead and added some connection points to the frame. So these loops right here from Takomoto, these are really nice. I just pulled out the, I think it's M8 screw that's here connecting the subframe to the main chromoly frame.
And as an aside, the original bolts that held that subframe on were a countersunk tapered bolt head type. So in order to adapt that to a flat surface that I could put the loops onto, I actually found some stainless steel bolts with the same countersink taper and drilled through their heads and made some conical washers that adapted that taper to a flat surface and then just bolted right through them to hold on the new strap loops.
So here I actually tapped a hole and inserted a screw. So I've got a loop here, a loop here. You can kind of see how that works. It locates the rear bags. It also creates the connection point that ultimately tensions those front bags that have the fuel in them. So nice little modification there, lightweight, using strong frame points. And that's what holds all my bags together. So let me zoom out and I'll show you next what's going on in the saddlebags. Not doing anything so different from anyone else, but let me show you the way I've got these set up. First off, ProMoto billet, Fastway rack. This was really hard to find. Finally found a company, BTO Sports. They were super helpful. They got the last 3 of them out of the warehouse, and I bought 2 of them for a friend of mine and I, that we both have the same bike. So we're running those, and I don't know where the last one went, but unfortunately these are not made anymore. Installation was a project, but nothing hard, just took some time. You had to really go through the steps because of the way it falls through the fender, connects into some really burly frame attachment points, which I love. So not a lot of weight on the rack right now, but it's functional already just for having a point back here to attach these bags. You got to realize the back of these bikes are just, there's nothing there. It's barely enough to hold up a tail light. I mean, you've got a plastic fender on top, some plastic molded, supports underneath. You can't put any weight on these things. They're just not strong enough. I've heard guys that put 10 pounds back here on a little bolt down plate, that just attaches to the fender. Well, 10 pounds when you're bouncing down whoops, all of a sudden 10 pounds is a lot more, and you can break your rear plastic subframe. So anyways, didn't want to mess with that. This is connected to the aluminum subframe, and nice and really well engineered, nice weight carrying capacity, very stiff, very robust, doesn't move around at all. So these are some pretty affordable saddlebags. They are made by this company Rhino Walk. Similar bags are made by other companies as well. They're imported. Definitely really respect the stuff that Wolfman and Giant Loop make. This was in the budget for me on this trip for something I haven't proven I'm going to do all the time. These were nice bags. They're waterproof. Obviously they have the waterproof closure, and they seem pretty tough so far. So here's what I've got in my left bag. I like these little Goal Zero lanterns. These are just really nice to have around camp. At night, you can hang it off of 2 different bikes, let's say, around the camp, and you can light up your whole, parking area with a couple of these lanterns. So these are nice, pretty small, and easy to charge up and then use for charging. This side has my sleeping stuff. So here's my down sleeping bag, really compact sleeping bag there. This is my sleeping pad. This is one of the, this is Gear Doctors. They call it a Gear Doctors Big Boys Edition. You actually fill this up with a bag, so no pump required for that. Nice comfy solution there. I've got some slip-on shoes here. These are ones that I never wear. They've got decent traction, but they're small enough. I would love to bring the boots that I wear all the time, but they're just too much space. In Mexico, I didn't want to rely on, say, sandals. We'll put these back in here, if nothing else, just to keep the shape. You can see I've got plenty of room still in these. They're not full. I should have explained at the very beginning, I'm not covering food or clothing. That's something that's so individual to everyone. Me showing you where I stick my granola bars doesn't really help, but on the bottom of the left saddlebag is my camp chair. It's a nice unit, nice high back. You can kind of recline in it. It's all aluminum. It's pretty light for what it is. So that's something that I am keeping on the bike as a bit of a luxury. But what's nice is that they just, can be attached to the bottom of the saddlebag. So anyways, that's on the left side. On the right side, I'm still trying to evaluate how much exhaust is a concern. I'll get into what I did for exhaust mitigation next, but right side, here's my bag of bags. I've actually got plastic bags in here for anything that turns into a wet or oily situation. I want to be able to isolate that. I've got lots of straps and buckles and bungees and clips, things that I would need to improvise on the trail to hold things down, which always comes up. You think you've got a perfect system, and then you find out everything's flying around. And if I don't use any of these, that's fine, but it's nice to have them next. Another thing I won't have to use, hopefully, this is an Armadillo 2-gallon fuel bladder, so I can fill this up if I need it. Depending on the range the other guys have, I may or may not use this. but you know, it's not too heavy, easy enough to bring it along. And if we decide we're going to go on some long, crazy traverse, some place that doesn't have fuel access, or we want to ride all night when they're closed or something, I don't know what might happen. You got to just kind of be prepared for the unexpected in Mexico. So I've got this giant loop armadillo bag. That's 60 more miles in my case, conservatively 30 miles per gallon, 60 more miles of range. Over here I've got my tent wrap, and the way I do it is I've got what I think people call a footprint tarp. This is nothing special, it's just a tarp. Brown is on one side, green is on the other side. Green is clean, so I've got it wrapped brown side out, and inside of this is my tent. So I just wrap it up. Inside here, the tent is just a one-person, not ultra light, but it's, you know, just light backpacker's tent. It's not titanium and carbon or anything, but it is pretty darn light for what it is. Just a single person tent. Gets me out of the wind, gets me out of the rain, and I think most importantly on a trip like this, gives me a place to put stuff. You know, this is the best it's ever going to get. I'm going to have a seat that has a work surface, maybe a rack. It's going to be leaned over. It's going to be in the sand. You know, pretty soon you take off your hot, sweaty clothes, let's say, or anything else you're trying to change in and out of. That stuff takes up your whole bike. You've got no place to set things. So one idea of having the tent is that I can take it out, set this up first thing. I've got a tarp on the ground. I've got a tent on top. I can shove all the rest I want inside the tent. Now I've got dry, semi-clean, semi-private area to do whatever I need to do. Change clothes, repack things, take out my air mattress at my leisure, and that sort of thing. So I was a bivy guy before, had a minimalist bivy. I've had some heavy duty outside sleeping bags that don't need a pad, don't need a bivy, don't need nothing. That's all fun, but I really like having a nice comfortable sleeping bag and sleeping pad. I get better sleep, and that's pretty important. This is a first aid kit. Good to have one of these around. The question is always, where do you put this? Do you put it at the bottom of the bag because you don't need to get to it all the time? Or do you put it at the top of the bag? Because when you need it, you need it. So I don't know if there's a right answer to that. Anyways, this is all the stuff that's in the saddlebags. Pretty straightforward, and I'll see if there's anything else I need to show you here. We're talking about gearing. I'm currently running a 1450 and a new chain. These are new sprockets. So that's actually a little bit more on the highway side than I previously rode. I had a 1348, which works out to be, I'll just call it, you know, street going or more rock crawl. I was more rock crawl before. So this is a little bit more street going. This is much better on the highway. Drops my top speed RPMs down quite a bit. Does change a little bit at the low end. If you idle it in first gear, it's going faster than I can walk, and that's not ideal. I always wanted it to go slow as I could get it, because most of the stuff I do is not fast. However, I'm getting more and more comfortable with slipping that clutch when I need to go slow, and so option one is basically slip the clutch when needed. That's what they're there for. Keep this for good highway manners, better fuel efficiency, less oil blow by for lower because of lower RPMs. Less wear and tear in general. So this is going to be the gear ratio I try. However, I wanted to have a backup plan, so that's where this comes in. This is a nice JT padded 13-tooth sprocket, brand new. It has the little rubber pad on there, which is nice for kind of quieting things down. And here's where I use my new friend ChatGPT to tell me, how can I run the same rear sprocket without changing it and with the same chain length, but being able to switch between a 13 and a 14-tooth front sprocket and get their kind of ratios that I'm looking for. Basically, almost like a transfer case. You've got two ranges if you're willing to change the front sprocket, but it's not totally obvious because you've got a limited adjustment space on your rear swing arm, and that drives a certain number of chain lengths, and that is dependent on what size sprockets you're running. So basically, I told it that I'd like to be able to run a 13 or 14 up front. That's the size that works well with the stock chain guards here. And I said, give me all the ratios of rear sprocket divided by front sprocket from, I think I told it 45 through 52. And it gave me a nice big table of all those gear ratios. I used to be running a 369. Now with a 14, I'm running a 354. If I put in the 13, I go up to a 3.8 something. So I basically have a more highway option on one side of what I was running, a more rock crawl option on the other side of what I was running. And it's pretty easy, honestly, to change a front sprocket, trail side, no big deal. So I'll be bringing this with me, as well as the 17mm socket that I need. And don't forget the Loctite that this sucker needs. Air filter wise, this isn't a great example. I need to clean this one out, but I'm bringing this one with a fresh oil job, and then a second filter will be pre-oiled in a gallon freezer bag ready to go. So I'll have 2 different filters, and I'm also bringing 6 of those Tusk air filter socks. So I'll probably just pull one of those off every day, and I'll have kind of a fresh-ish filter every day. Even if we get into lots of sand, we're following each other closely and doing nothing but ingesting sand. It'll be pretty miserable for us and the bikes, but the sand will stop at the filter. I will not be going into the engine with it. So that's cheap insurance. I switched over to an Enduro Engineering seat. This is their soft, tall seat. And this is a nice upgrade, because the one that was on here is a nice seat, but it was pretty sharp. And it had a nice little step here, as a stepped seat. So you could really feel where you were on the seat, and you could even put a little pressure against that. But after just a few hours of riding, it got pretty uncomfortable. So this one, being a tall seat, it's more straight across, less dip. And then, like all Enduro Engineering seats, it's got more curve to it and a softer pad than it was here before. So if I can get on here without tipping things over, I'll show you. The ergonomics are much improved. I'm about 6'4". I've got lowered Vinosh foot pegs here, so my feet sit lower. I've got raised handlebars by about almost an inch, maybe a full inch now that I look at it. So I think we're down 7/8 on the foot pegs, up an inch on the handlebars. And with the seat being where it is, it just feels really good. So my knees can tuck underneath these pocket panniers up front, even when I have my gear on, my knee pads. It's easy to get up front on the bike when I want. It's easy to get back. This seat has a big, wide area of usable space that's softened corners, soft material, and kind of puts you on your sit bones, as they say. And the other thing about having a tall seat is that it makes the transition up to standing a little bit better than it was before. So basically, less total knee angle to go from sitting to standing. And that's good for encouraging you to stand, which is always a good idea. When I had the original pegs, my feet were up here. When I had the lower seat, I was sitting down a little lower, and then my hands were, lower by an inch, let's say, than these handlebars. So you can imagine my hands were just kind of just off my knees, and getting up was a struggle. And when I got there, I felt like I didn't have any triangulation. I felt like I was pivoting on the same point with my hands and my knees. Now I'm spread out. I can do a lot better standing up and being comfortable on the bike. I can grab the tank, feel really secure on here. So that's a nice improvement that the Enduro Engineering seat is only helping with. So the last of it is basically doing all the maintenance. Checking the sag, by the way, is worth doing. I didn't have to adjust my spring. It was actually sitting a little high before. So measuring the sag to make sure things are all good there. Lubing, checking, tightening, and Loctiting everything I can get my hands on, just to have basically a fresh service on the bike that's going to limit the surprises. It's an adventure on its own. I don't want to bring my own silly adventures. I want to fix all those ahead of time. Worth doing all the time, but especially before you go on a major trip like this. Last thing I want to show you is how I tackled the exhaust. So let me tip this up out of the way. I've got a trifecta of heat prevention here. So number one, let's start on the bag side. This is just regular old HVAC tape. This is nothing special. This is going to be reflective. It's going to keep the heat from soaking into the bag. It's actually going to reflect that heat back, and that is hopefully going to be reflecting back into an airspace where it gets carried away. I've got a spacer here, which will keep the bag off of the muffler directly, and that creates that space and makes sure that things don't get right on the muffler and singe like this did in my shakedown run. And then lastly, these are so-called titanium blankets. It's a material that has great insulating properties, also looks really cool. And so this is going to try to keep the heat in the pipe. This is going to allow airflow around the pipe. This is going to reflect heat back from the pipe rather than soaking it into the contents of the bag. That's my 3-part system for keeping things cool. Under no illusions though, things in that bag will definitely get toasty over a long ride. So I guess that's where I put my soup and my cookies. That kind of thing goes in the bottom of that one. There's more stuff going on with the helmet and comms and some things we're doing as a group to be able to ride more effectively together. I will probably do videos on those if they're interesting, but the last thing I'll show you here, I also did a video, or it may not be out yet, but I'll be publishing a video. That's on a headlight upgrade. So briefly, these headlights, they leave a bit to be desired. From the factory, they did something that works, but not great. This is an AC system, so you've got pretty limited power coming from the stator, AC power to the headlight. Of course, you can get some pretty cool options here. Baja Designs, various other makers make lights for this. However, it gets complicated, and when it's not complicated, it gets expensive. You've got to get a regulator rectifier, you've got to rewind your stator, you've got to put in an aftermarket stator. What I ended up doing here, fortunately, found this conversion which lets you put an H7 bulb where that original bulb was. It was a European spec, I think, bulb that was in there. Just not great, and these bulbs very plentiful and make lots of light. So essentially I put an H7 adapter in there. I've got this Osram bulb, which comes with the kit, and it's been evaluated by the maker of that kit to be the sort of heaviest duty in terms of robustness, being on a dirt bike, and also very, very bright for the amount of electricity it uses. So everything I'm using here will be listed in the description down below. If you're interested in this stuff, you can click on those links. Some of them will be Amazon affiliate links. I'll get a couple pennies from Bezos whenever you buy something after clicking on my link. Other links will be directly to the manufacturer website, such as, this giant loop, or say this, light conversion. But I hope that this was helpful to you. If you've got a dirt bike that you want to go on more camping rides with, or you've got an adventure style bike that you want to make more adventurous, anything in between, similar bike or dissimilar bike, I hope that this was helpful for sharing. I wouldn't be so bold as to say you would do the exact same modifications that I would, but I hope that it gave you some of the criteria, things to evaluate, strategies for how to modify your current ride into something that's more adventure worthy and more fun, more capable, safe, reliable, all those things that I've tried to prioritize here. I hope some of them were helpful to you as well. So if they were, hit the like button. That will make sure that YouTube sends this around to the literally 6 other people. They're probably interested in the same detailed, semi-dorky information, and that'll really help me out. But most of all, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.